manage their emotions. You might find one person at some point, they are happy, and then once something triggers them, all of a sudden, they're on the other side. They can oscillate from being happy to being sad. They might become easily irritable, and they usually react rather than respond. I'm sure we already know the difference between reacting and responding. When something happens, you stop and you try and think and process what is really going on before you then respond to it. But someone who is reactive, every time something happens, they are quick to jump to the negative things and feel, you know what, you are targeting me. Maybe I'm not good enough. You know, a lot of negativity affects a person who has experienced trauma. There's also an element of difficulty in trusting others. Why? Because you always feel that harm is always in your way. So you never believe that something good is going to happen. If you've had experiences with some people who have war veterans, for example, those that suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, where they really experienced a lot of trauma, you find that when something just happens, that quickly reminds them, they're quick to jump and they want to fight. What happens basically is that in our systems, God created us in such a way that when we experience something that is unusual or unnatural, we either want to fight, either want to run away, which is flight, or we freeze and we don't know what to do. So who has experienced trauma is always on the flight spectrum. So they always feel that something dangerous is about to happen. What happens when someone who was sexually abused or who experienced sexual trauma then wants to get married and they have not processed that trauma? It leads to intimacy issues. So struggling with intimacy due to past experiences of abuse or trauma, they begin to see those vivid images again of the violence or the trauma coming back again. And that is how we begin to see something that may have happened when they're just 1 or 2 years old. But later on in life, because it was not processed, they begin to experience that trauma over and over. We find that trauma can even affect our physical health. People can struggle with chronic pain and health issues. I don't know if you've ever heard about this, but there's something that we call psychosomatic symptoms, where you've got a physical pain, which you can feel, but if you are to go to the doctor and you want them to examine and find out what's wrong, they can't actually find a medical cause for it. Have we heard of experiences like that? Yes? And some of these can actually be as a result of trauma that you have experienced. So it's as though that pain has then transferred and is lodged somewhere in your body. But if you can't quite pick out where it is, you'll continue to have that pain and that sensation that you are experiencing. Here are some of the examples that are being given. Gastrointestinal issues, chronic pain, you might find even autoimmune diseases. These are some of the things that will continuously affect a person as a result of trauma that has not been processed. Even sleep disturbances. Every time you want to close your eyes to sleep, you have those flashbacks. You've heard of flashbacks before, yes? You have those flashbacks where you're constantly having nightmares and you're rethinking and you're reliving that experience. It really can affect one's overall well-being. Let's go to academic and professional life. I'm sure this is something that affects us. Concentrating when you've experienced trauma, again, because your mind is preoccupied with that incident that caused you a lot of trauma, you find that you struggle with your cognitive function. So you're struggling to concentrate, you're struggling to complete tasks, you're struggling even with problem solving or even making decisions. And you know what's so sad? Because people don't yet understand what is going on or they have no idea what you've experienced, they seem to call you a lazy person or they say you're disengaged, you don't want to interact with others, you're isolating yourself, not knowing that one person might be actually struggling with the effects of trauma and these have been unprocessed. We also have challenges with absenteeism and presenteeism, which is when, for example, absenteeism, where a person is not actually attending classes or this person is not showing up for work, right? Because they're preoccupied with those thoughts, they actually don't have the strength to get up and go and be able to complete the tasks. Then we even have presenteeism, where a person might be there, but they've zoned out. Their mind is literally miles away. Their body is here, but their mind is preoccupied with all sorts of thoughts. Why didn't I fight? Why wasn't I strong enough? Why wasn't there anyone to help me? Couldn't I have done something to make sure that I didn't lose a loved one? There's a lot of questions that are, that this person is going through and this person is experiencing. Flashbacks of that abuse. There's a lot that people might be experiencing. And so it then tends to affect our productivity, and it means that we are not able to become the best version of who God wants us to be. These are some of the effects of trauma. Then let's look at even the social life. Abuse or trauma can lead to social isolation due to feelings of shame, guilt, or fear of being judged. When you have been abused and you feel that you are no longer worthy, when you feel that you are less important than other people, sometimes you are blaming yourself. If only I had done this, or if only I had done that, maybe I wouldn't have been abused. That can also be the plight of people who have experienced trauma that has not been processed. Difficulty forming healthy relationships, where one is struggling to form and maintain healthy relationships due to past experiences of abuse or trauma. Now let's move on to trauma experiences and how that can then lead to issues such as self-harm. Have you heard of self-harm? It's quite rampant from what I've seen, especially high schools now. I know it's a disease that they used to say this one just affects people in the Western countries. But you know what? Because of technology and because of media, there's a lot that we are learning and borrowing from the other countries and from the Western world. So we find that there's a lot of self-harm that is taking place right now, and there's things such as cutting and burning to try and cope with that emotional pain. When you don't know what to do, you are feeling a pain emotionally, but you want to then transfer it onto your physical body so that you also feel that pain. There's a lot that is taking place there. There's also the issue of substance abuse. And someone might even ask, is it relevant for us to be talking about substance abuse in church? I would say yes. We must be talking about substance abuse because it is everywhere. Sometimes people want to think of only those drugs that are heavy core drugs. But what about some of the drugs that we just self-medicate and we are taking in excess? Is that not also substance abuse? So using substances to numb emotional pain or cope with trauma, these are some of the ways that people are now trying to deal with that trauma because they don't know how else to deal with it. Sometimes when people have tried to reach out because of the trauma or because of the abuse that they've experienced, we tend to be called attention seekers. Have you heard of that one? Yeah, it seems people don't have time to listen. People don't have time to hear what is going on and to either help you or to refer you to help that can assist you. So you find people then resort to things such as self-harm or substance abuse. We also have interpersonal abuse. We said someone may have suffered trauma because abuse was inflicted on you. But what then happens when someone then continues to stay in an abusive relationship, or to then project and begin to abuse others as a result? So it's also another way that we begin to see people dealing with or trying to process the issues of trauma as well as abuse. Yes?
Yeah, okay, now this.
That's true. That's true. So you have things such as eating disorders and even disordered eating, isn't it? Does anyone know the difference between eating disorders and disordered eating? Or it's new? Just try and think, it's okay. We're here to learn. What is the difference in your view? Eating disorders and disordered eating. I'm seeing my sister here is trying to explain to her friend. Please just explain to us. Don't worry, we are here to learn. Give it a try. Give it a try. Yeah.
I think that eating disorders, the difference is that one we misuse food, and then the other one, when we are like
Yeah. You're actually correct. Wow. Okay, that's good. Yes, that's basically what's happening. So your eating disorders are the ones that you actually say this has gotten. So let me start with disordered eating. We are told by our spirit of prophecy, the new start, right? We have to eat well, we have to eat a balanced diet, isn't it? But there are some people that just eat You have no idea what nutritional content it's got, or you don't know, it's not balanced. You are just eating for the sake of, this is something that I think I can consume. So that's disordered eating. And then an eating disorder, when it now just becomes in excess, like what you're saying, when you now don't even know what you're eating, there's some people who even starve themselves, right? Because there's a certain image that they are trying to build up. So there's a lot that is going on in terms of that. And sometimes, like you're saying, it could be as a result of trauma. Remember what I said earlier, when someone has labeled you that you're not good enough, or they've said something about your appearance, and because you are fighting and you're striving so hard to try and prove otherwise, you end up engaging in eating disorders or disordered eating. And again, this is something that is coming even to us. Sometimes you're focused too much on your books. You want to try and do exceedingly and abundantly beyond. And you tend then not to nourish or take care of your body, and it becomes disordered eating. Sometimes that can also be in response to a trauma that we've experienced. Now, let's focus on the idea of dealing with those traumas. I've given some examples. Maybe before I go on to dealing with traumas, are there any other ways that you know of that someone who has gone through trauma, how do you think it then shows up as they are now a young adult? In what ways does trauma show up as one is a young adult? Does someone have any experience, or does someone have any example? How can you tell that someone is struggling with trauma?
I can help.
Yes, thank you.
They are physically
Mm-hmm.
and that's one thing.
That's true. That's true. You might find that their mood swings. I think we spoke about that. Irritability. So there's a lot of emotional instability there that you can be able to tell, something is going on. And someone might be experiencing something. Can we come here and then we go back to my brother here? Yes, sister? That's very, very true. So easily triggered. Again, you're being reactive, isn't it? Yes, and not responsive. And I guess we call that projecting someone's frustrations, right? Where sometimes if you find someone who is similar, let's say, for example, you've been bullied, right? Anyone who you think they symbolize, either they physically look like that person or they symbolize by maybe aggression, you tend to then want to vent that frustration on that other person. So yes, that's very, very common. Yes, my brother?
I think fault finding and comparison.
Oh yeah, that's very true.
Someone else want to, maybe if they come across someone, anyone, they can just say, this one, the big ears, or the sweetest dirty, or anything about anyone else, they find something wrong about it.
That's true. There's a common statement, I don't know if you guys know about it, I'm coming to you. It says, hurt people hurt others. You've heard about that one, right? And that typically exemplifies what you've just said there, where because you've been hurt, you're now constantly trying to look for someone else just to feel good about yourself. Sometimes it happens. I think I saw a hand right there, and then there as well. It's nice to see people contributing. Let me bring my mic that side.
Okay, so I would say sometimes it can be shown by overconfidence.
Okay.
When someone wants to prove that I can do it, they discourage something, then they overconfidence in doing everything. They want to just show you that I can do it.
Okay. All right. Would we call that compensatory behavior of sorts? Compensatory behavior? Mm-hmm. So one person might shy away, right? And another might end up becoming overdoing things as a way of trying to hide. So you're creating a facade like things are okay when you actually know you've not processed things. Yes, thank you. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I have a friend, the teaching program, we are able to go to art because of trauma, after that trauma in art.
Yes.
So one of the paintings that I think out of the country. I don't know if it goes to trauma, goes another. But just goes there, I have to square with bigger to trauma someone. So because of that, after the art, just try to bully that trauma.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing that. I want, maybe I will say something on that when I then talk about dealing with traumas, because actually we believe that's actually a very good thing, right? So I'll share with you in a moment why I say so. So now we want to talk about dealing with traumas, but that's very correct. Thank you. So dealing with traumas, there are a number of things that can be done to assist. I don't know if you can hear me? Yeah? Okay, cool. There are a number of things that can be done to be able to assist a person to be able to deal with traumas. And that is a good thing. I'm sure we can think about it, right? So whatever traumas you may be aware of, something you might have experienced, the question would be, is there help for someone who has experienced trauma? And the answer is, yes, there is, right? And I will then share a bit more about what my brother there said. So we've got things such as therapy and counseling. Therapy is basically being able to find healing through talking. So we have things such as trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy basically is being able to work with the mindset of a person, right? Because what we believe is that your thoughts, they influence your feelings, and that then affects your behavior or your actions. So if you can help a person who is constantly pondering and thinking about those traumatic instances, and for them they become a threat and they disable them from becoming a productive person, then we want to come up with a form of help that would allow a person not to continuously think of that experience as something that is disabling, but rather to be able to process it and be able to continue to live a fruitful and a productive life. So that is the part of the trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. You also have something that is called EMDR, rapid eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is a technique, again, that can be used in therapy to try and help a person not to avoid that experience, but rather to be able to process that experience and not find it as threatening. I don't know if that makes sense. I'll give you a typical example. Someone who was traumatized by animals, there are specific phobias, which is an irrational fear of something. What you can then do is you help that person, tell me about your story. What is it that really happened? And as they are telling you about that story, you then help them in a safe way to continuously remember that they are not in that situation again. They are past it. But to be able then to process it and not continuously have that fear response that I was talking about. Rather be able to move past it, acknowledge that it happened, but be able to move past it and still be able to live a productive life. So those are some of the examples of types of therapy that are there to assist people that have experienced trauma. You also have what we call support groups, which are groups that provide a safe space for individuals to share their experiences and also connect. You know, sometimes if you have a situation, we tend to feel very alone, and because you're alone, it becomes a very heavy burden. But if you hear that someone else is struggling with a similar situation, there's a sense of relief that comes. Not because you're happy that someone else is struggling, but to just know that you're not alone, you know? And when you ask them, how are you dealing with it? And you also hear, you might get an idea or two that might also help you think, oh, okay, so maybe I might try it. And as you try out, you're constantly supporting each other. It helps you to process things better. So there are trauma support groups as well that can help people to deal with the traumas that they have. And then we also have online support groups. Yes, so it's either physical or it can be online. But these are safe spaces that allow people to really talk about those traumatic situations and get the necessary help that is available. You also have self-care and coping strategies, and this is where I now talk about what my brother just shared about his friend who decided, you know what, as a way of dealing with this trauma, I want to apply it or put it to paper. I don't know if you've heard about this, but there are certain people that are artistic. It can be the drawing, it can be singing, it can be anything really, journaling or writing. People are using helpful ways of trying to cope with the trauma and process it in a useful way. And if you look at some of the things that they actually produce, it can actually be quite brilliant. I told you earlier about someone who I was talking to who was struggling with self-harm. For them, I then wanted to understand a bit more of what was really happening and what is it that caused them to self-harm in the form of cutting. And they said, I love the color red. Follow. They love the color red. And they said, I just want to see the color red. And I asked them, what are some of the gifts that God has given you? I love art. So what if you use the color red to draw? And you know what? They actually started drawing with a lot of red, variations of the color red, and they produced very good artwork. So for them, I was able to help them to redirect their focus from blood or red, that's something that is dangerous, to something that could actually produce something better. Sometimes trauma as well can be processed in people who enjoy baking. You know, as you are beating your dough, right? Yes. Actually being productive as you're kneading that dough, you are actually venting out that frustration. Some people love to run, you know, just running. It's using that energy, releasing that energy, because remember, if you don't use that energy, then that person can become self-destructive. But as they release that energy, as they are running, as they're doing a power walk, I also encourage them, take time to pray, talk to God, tell him about what you're experiencing. Some people have found that quite useful. So engaging in self-care and coping strategy can actually assist. And then the important thing that I think we need to talk about here is seeking help. We need to break the silence. So there's a lot of brokenness that is there. There's a lot of healing that needs to take place, but it can only take place if we seek help. So the encouragement is to break the silence. Seeking help is a crucial step in healing and recovery from trauma. And then building resilience. What is resilience? Anyone to share? What is resilience? Yes, ma'am. Yes, the ability to bounce back. And I think we all need that, isn't it? Especially having experienced trauma. When you've experienced something that has taken away power from you, something that, you know, makes you feel that you are not worthy. But if we are able to bounce back. And I think the most important thing when we want to learn how to bounce back is to go back to God, right? It's like any appliance that we have. When it breaks down, the best person to fix it is who? The manufacturer, isn't it? Yes. So with the traumas that we've experienced, we always just then need to go back to God and ask him and just say, you know, Lord, this is who I am broken and I need mending. And God has promised that he is able to mend us. Like my brother they mentioned earlier where he said, you're going to be broken in one way or another. The devil brings all that brokenness in a way that is meant to, you know, to destroy us, and we fail to realize our God-given potential. But when God is there to then break us, he is then going to lift us up again and to heal us. So now I want us to move to trauma as it relates to the spirit of prophecy. There are a few interesting things that I read and I wanted to just share with you so that we can see this. Maybe you might be asking, does the pen of inspiration talk about abuse? Does it talk about trauma? If so, in what way can we also find help? So in her public ministry of more than 70 years, Sister White received several visions and dreams with messages ranging from personal counsel to issues pressing upon the newly founded church in such areas as faith and doctrine, organization and mission, health and education, and so on. One of her major roles was to help individuals and the church organization to understand and follow God's will. Though she had no formal mental health training, she often served as a spiritual counselor for people who had various emotional and psychological needs. She touched the lives of thousands and gave them new hope with a healthy spirit, mental and emotional focus. Her extensive writings demonstrate sympathy for mental health issues. Among other material, she wrote an important chapter called Mind Cure in her book, The Ministry of Healing. In 1977, the E.G. White Estate published a 2-volume compilation titled Mind, Character and Personality. Have people read that book? I want to encourage those that have not, please take time to also go through the book, Mind, Character and Personality. You'll hear a lot. So Sister White's understanding of human nature was based on the biblical view that human nature is inherently sinful and needs external help from God. To her, Jesus was the great healer of the sin-damaged human mind. It is impossible for us of ourselves, she wrote, to escape from the pit which we are sunken. Our hearts are evil and we cannot change them. She then quoted John 14 verse 4 and Romans 8 verse 7 to support this view. She continued, education, culture, the exercise of the will, human effort, all have their proper sphere, but here they are powerless. They may produce an outward correctness of behavior, but they cannot change the heart. They cannot purify the springs of life. There must be a power working from within, a new life from above, before men and women can be changed from sin to holiness. So for Sister White, there was a convergence of psychology and theology. The two must interplay, and when correctly integrated, provide the most help for the human mind and emotions. For her, the true source of mental and emotional health was God, the loving Father, Jesus, the great physician, and the Holy Spirit, the counselor. Let me stop here. So basically what we are learning from this is that even the pen of inspiration acknowledges the idea that as humans we go through a lot of experiences, right? Not only spiritually as we are growing in Christ and as we are becoming more like Christ, but also physically there are things that we experience. And what we saw here was that there's a connection between the physical health, the mental health, and the spiritual health. If I'm not okay mentally, it's very difficult for me to be able to perform physically, for example. If I need to walk, but I'm not well mentally, I don't even have the strength to take the next step. Physically, if I'm not well, then I won't do well in school either, or I won't work productively either. And likewise, if I'm not well physically or mentally, then even spiritually, it's difficult for me to hear God speak to me. And that is why it was very important that as Sister White was writing through the pen of inspiration, she also addresses the issues of mental health. I don't know if you've also learnt about Sister White's personal experience. Did you know that she had experienced a broken nose at the age of 9? Can you imagine how that disability actually affected her? You know that she had to drop out of school quite early. You know about that, right? So imagine the children of her time are going to school, but she has suffered a broken nose and you can't go to school as well. How do you think she experienced, how do you think she was able to get through that? Don't you think she also suffered some sort of trauma? Right? And if you try and also read earlier on in the history, before she got help from Levi Stockman, I'll also share that with you, but she also initially didn't really understand God the way she did after then having, received guidance from Levi Stockman. In fact, it begins by saying this narrative here talks about how she used to see God as a very strict parent, right? One was very strict and demanded perfection and nothing else. Who was a God who disconnected basically from humanity. So imagine this: I have a broken nose, I can't go to school, but I'm also being looked on by this God who I think is a tyrant basically. And there's the 1844 message that is coming, right? Am I going to even make it? There was a lot of doom that I think used to surround her mind. There was a lot that was going on. But you know what's interesting? After she struggled with that for quite a phase, we then have the instance of Levi Stockman, who was able then to talk to her and to be able to present God as the loving Father that he truly is. So we're seeing instances of Ellen White's life where she hadn't received anyone to talk to who had helped her to realize that despite the physical disability she was struggling with, God still loved her and God still had a purpose for her life. And then after she had someone who spoke to her and showed her in true light God's character as a loving Father, one who desires our good, one who calls us, and even in our brokenness, he still loves us and has a mission for us, then she was able to be an effective instrument in God's vineyard. So you find very interesting words here. I want to just read something here. The second paragraph: my heart went out towards him in a deep and fervent love. This is after having been presented with God in the correct picture. The love of God became Ellen White's favorite theme throughout her life. She also believed that Christ's favorite theme was paternal tenderness and the abundant grace of God. Her 5-volume masterpiece series on the cosmic conflict between Christ and Satan begins and ends with this theme, which is the love of God. Her most popular book, Steps to Christ, published in scores of languages with millions of copies, has as its first chapter God's love for man. So again, we're moving from a part where she used to see God as a very strict God who does not love mankind, who just wants them to be perfect, to then realizing, you know what, God still wants us to be perfect, but God is there to help us every step of the way. And God just does not love those that are perfect. you know, but God loves us even if we have experienced trauma, even if we have experienced abuse in whatever form, God still calls us and God still loves us. So she then wrote a lot or extensively about God's love for man. Ellen White's personal experience combined with her visionary guidance helped. Her scope of interaction with people was varied and diverse. So, for example, she spoke, she addressed a brother Morrill, who was struggling with obsessive behavior. This is a type of mental disorder. At some point, she also gave counsel to Harriet Stowell. This is Mrs. Harriet Stowell, who had suffered emotional abuse. She then also wrote to Brother Henry Frey, who was struggling with alcohol addiction. And then she also, in the books, there is a letter written to a minister in South Africa in 1896 who was struggling with sexual dysfunction. I'll provide references so that if you want, you can also then go and read up some of these things and see how she worked. These are just for examples, but she worked extensively, giving counsel to various social dysfunctions that people were struggling with. So these, for examples, illustrate the level of involvement Sister White had in the lives of many people who had emotional and mental health difficulties. One of the remarkable characteristics of her work is a consistent optimism that people can recover, no matter how broken they may be. Let me read that again. One of the remarkable characteristics of Sister White's work is her consistent optimism that people can recover, no matter how broken they may be. Sister White always pointed them to God as the great healer of mind and soul. Ellen White was holistic in her approach to healing. She realized that the mind was linked to the body and that God intended humans to have restored social relationships. For her, the most important connection was with a loving and a holy Heavenly Father. So again, just as I've been talking about, the idea that God wants us to be whole and to be well. If you read 3 John verse 2, it says, what does it say? In all things. So we're looking at a total wellness, isn't it? Yes. So God desires that we might be holistically well. Psalm 147 verse 3, he, referring to God, he heals the brokenhearted and he binds up their wounds. So just as we learned earlier, God's ideal for us is that he may bind our wounds, that we may be whole. And he is not just demanding that we be whole, but he is there to help us through every step of the way to ensure that we become whole. So back to my question, which I asked you when we started this afternoon's discourse. The concepts of being called, experiencing brokenness, and finding healing are intertwined in the way that suggests a journey of transformation and growth. Being called often implies a divine or personal purpose, and encountering brokenness can be a crucial step in recognizing one's vulnerabilities and limitations. Healing then becomes the process of mending those wounds, both emotionally and spiritually, and often leading to a strengthened and more resilient sense of self. So, do we want to bounce back? To be able to bounce back, it means we are going to have to experience that transformative power that can only come through Christ. So the essence of today's message, which I wanted us to just learn from, is God may have called us, and God may have called people that are broken, but God just does not leave us there. God is intended, even as we are going to experience, or even as we have experienced brokenness, he is going to heal us. God has called us. He is aware of our past experiences. He knows our present weaknesses and our shortcomings. He knows if he allows us to go through crucibles that are going to make sure that we are broken, but it is broken with a purpose. He still loves us and longs to restore us. Though broken, we can still find healing in him. So this leads us to the end of our presentation. Thank you so much for listening. Would there be any reactions maybe before I close? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay.
Thank you. So, at my previous workplace, the son of my boss threw some false allegations on me. because he was forcing me to do something that I was not willing to do. Then it happened that I attended in my resignation. Then his father got to know about it and called me for a meeting with the mother. So when after I explained myself, they said, no, you're not wrong. That's when the father said, you know what, Joe just lost his wife. That's what he's doing to everyone here. So you just need to understand it, James. And I'm like, everyone is with trauma, ma'am. It doesn't mean to say if he has lost his wife, he has to go around throwing, bashing heads on every person's face.
For sure.
So the reason why I'm saying this, all of us, we are broken one way or the other. Your brokenness doesn't justify your bad actions on other people. You still need to hold yourself accountable.
Okay.
Because there are some people who are going to still throw rotten eggs to our face. No, I've got trauma. From my past relationship, my boyfriend treated me this way. I've got trauma. That's not a reason. We definitely need to tell ourselves it's time to heal. We definitely need to hold ourselves accountable. Because on my previous workplace, I ended up remembering, hey, there were a lot of high exodus of people. How many people walked out of that and broken? At least me, I healed from it. And now they will talk about it, laughing about it, even with the guy. But how many people walked out broken? So don't ever justify trauma by throwing rotten eggs to other people's faces.
Thank you so much. We need help, right? And that is why we actually are having this discussion this afternoon. When you have experienced trauma in one way or another, right? I think maybe sometimes what causes people not to do anything about it, they end up projecting, like what you've mentioned, is they don't even know what to do with themselves. They are in a state of, they just don't know what's happening. But thank you so much. I love how you've expressed that, there's a lot of stuff that had to happen so that this person would get help. I'm happy you were able to recover from that, because you know what, the reality is someone has experienced that, they might not even want to look for a job the next time because they feel that it might happen again. I'm grateful you're able to process it and work through it. But again, like you've said, if you've experienced trauma in one way or another, it is not healthy to project it onto other people. To say, I don't trust men, all men are, because, get help. We have spoken about help that is available, right? You need to get help. Jesus is there, God is there, right? We shared the experience of even Sister White and the trauma that she went through. How do you think she was able to recover from that? She went back to God. She was able to receive assistance even from Brother Saltman, and you see she was able to process that. So let us get the help that is necessary so that we can heal. Thank you for that. I think there was another hand.
Okay, I wanted to ask on the difference between bouncing back that resilience you have mentioned on the signs or on the signs that shows that one is traumatized. We mentioned resilience, and then on the strategies to cope with trauma, we mentioned again resilience. So what is the difference now between resilience and that compensatory behavior we mentioned on the signs or what shows that the person is traumatized?
If I'm understanding it correctly, there's resilience, being able to bounce back after something bad has happened, and then compensatory behavior. Compensatory behavior is you trying to create a false impression that I'm okay when you're actually not okay. But resilience is when you are okay and you don't allow it to bother you. Maybe let me give an example. Our brother was just spoken right now, right? If I could give an example like that. So let's say, as a result of how he was mistreated and then fired from the job, let's say he was fired. He said he resigned, but let's say he had been fired. Someone with compensatory behavior then walks around and says, you know what, I left this job, these people are just useless, and I was such a great person. They are hiding the idea, the real reason behind them having left that place. And you find wherever they go also, they tend to overdo things. I am indispensable, I am such an amazing person. They have this impression that you couldn't get rid of me. But someone who is resilient is being able to really look at this situation and say, what really just happened? Were there elements that maybe I may have contributed to what happened today? Fine, I've been laid off from work, but what could I have gotten from this? When I see this person the next time, I don't hold them with resentment. I realize that, you know what, this person behaved in this way because of their own problems. It had nothing to do with me. If there are issues that I had to deal with, I have looked at myself with introspection, I have dealt with those things, but I don't hold that person accountable for it. That is resilience. I hope that responds to your question. Yes, so yes, compensatory behavior, people can create a facade, a fake impression, and I think, to be honest, a lot of people still do that, especially if they don't know how to correctly deal with that trauma. But having dealt with it, you can now look back, talk about that situation without it re-triggering that instance which you found. If you see someone who might treat you in a similar way, instead of you then treating them like how you would have treated the original person, you now just realize, you know what, this is not my problem anymore. Yeah. I think I saw another hand. Where's our mic? There are 3 hands that I see.
Thank you so much. It was a very insightful presentation. I dealt with a lot of trauma in the family setting. And I think, like you said, broken people break more people. But I want us to start understanding that as Christians, we're not called to be weak. And I'm not being hard on anyone. I really mean Christ was the most resilient individual in his time. Think about everything he went through before persecution, before crucifixion. And he still has the calmness and the composure to ask God to forgive those who were just crucified. I mean, that's amazing, right? Because I would have asked God to strike them down. So I read a book that really helped me with resilience, and it's called Grit by Angela Duckworth. I recommend it for every student, every professional. It will help you in the workplace, because the number one skill for success today, I won't lie to you, is emotional intelligence by far. If you read that, and I think there's one called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right? And the other kind of smart. If you read those kind of books, you understand why America is where it is. Because I think they've understood psychology more than the rest of the world, and they use it in a industrial setting, like they apply the psychology. But now in Christianity, we need to start realizing that we're not called to be weak.
Thank you so much. We can learn from Christ, isn't it? I like how you mentioned that God, Christ went through so much whilst he was here on earth. There was just literally every step he took, there was so much that was going on, but he was so resilient. And again, I guess that's why, the Pen of Inspiration continues to encourage us. Let us go back to Christ, because he is the healer, isn't it? He can heal our brokenness. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Okay. You mentioned something about flashbacks as a sign of trauma. I experienced some things like that. It happened like in 2020 during the COVID era. I lost 2 close people who were actually, I was looking up to them, those people. And it happened in a space of 3 or 2 months. So, and the worst part of it on the other day, I loved to watch football during that time. So we were actually watching a football game during that night, which I think ended up like around 11, close to midnight. But then around 1, we'll be told, the person we're watching football with, commenting football together here, is now in the hospital. Then a few hours later, they are gone. Something like that. Then that that night and some few months that followed that incident, I started experiencing some anxiety attacks. When something unusual happens just before me, I would be like, I go into an attack. That's from that moment. Then I didn't seek any medical attention or any counseling sessions. I tried to pray about it on my own. But in 2023, it happened that I lost my niece, a daughter to my little sister, in my own hands. I was rushing with her to the hospital. She was just sick for very few hours. After I was actually coming from work, there was called, Mark Peter town, please just look for some pills in town when I tell you running so much. The moment that I get home, I was trying to say, guys, please, my name is but when I got there, I took out my books and my cards, and when I know the moment I'm getting there is like, Mana is lifeless. Trying to run but I lost this in my own hands. Then those attacks came back again. For the first time since around 2021 or so. So I don't know, and from that time as well, I didn't seek any medical attention or any counseling session. I prayed about it as well, but it happened for some nights that followed. So now I don't know if I'm going to come across that same situation. How then can someone like me deal with these flashbacks?
Thank you. Sir at the back, do you want to respond to that? Yeah. Oh, okay.
All right, my class. So I just want to say, I've read so many stories that Chambalama, but it has been increasing as a trend, the issue of psychological pain. So whenever you get a situation, consider things like depression, you are advised to seek medical attention from a medical professional. Because recently we have been seeing it as a trend. It's unfortunate that we grew up in communities whereby if you tell people that you are depressed, in the next minute, it becomes your nickname with our depression. But I want to tell you, even I grew up, I can testify my name, I could say, almost every week when they're on call, we get to see patients that's got 5, 6 different sets of pain medication. And they've just been going to a pharmacy. I can't sleep. They get this stronger medication. Then, as Africans, when it does, you don't go back to the same person again. You go to the next one and you'll be like, yes. But actually, this happened to a certain even lady. She had 5, 6 medications. She was consulted. She talked. She expressed her whole history. She had lost a close relative 5 years ago. So she had been done all the tests, the scans and all that. But what she simply needed was at least 5 sessions of counseling. After that, she was stopped all the medications she was given. So I'm advising you that if you get into those situations, don't try to sometimes act strong. I love the theme, it says, cold as the first point. So if you are cold, if I call you, it's a sign that I need to talk to you. So if you are cold, you are being invited into a conversation. So you are also, whether you are in which state of being broken you are, we are being invited to have a conversation. We are as I conclude, in Zimbabwe, we are rated as one of the poorest countries. So whenever you are managing someone, 70% of your management comes from talking to that person. So I'm even telling you that whatever pain, whatever depression, whatever situation that you are in, 70% of your treatment is understanding your problem and getting to know how to maneuver that. So I've also seen quite several youths, they can't sleep because of psychological pain. So the next thing is they're now looking for drugs that can make them sleep. So let's try, my brother, you can get psychological counseling, even if you are going to get medication later, but get counseling, understand your condition, and get to know what to do. My testimony is like this. I had a brother who got sick, and by the time he got sick, I was in second, third year. I was using the latest iPhone during that time. And when he got sick, I think what we really needed, there was something which needed something like 300 pages. And later on he died. But one thing that I regretted that time was I could have sold my phone so that he can be treated. And I regretted that even up to now. I can afford to buy any iPhone that I want, but I have never bought an iPhone. Because every time when I see an iPhone, I'm like, I could have sold my iPhone to help my brother. So now I'm going through counseling that, no, these things can happen. It's now PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorders. So you need someone to assist you. You cannot assist yourself. So you need to be coached, even if you pray so much for it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That was quite elaborate. And again, I'll draw you back to the experience of Sister White, like I mentioned, how she got help, not only from Brother Stolkman, which again would equate to getting help through counseling, but also being pointed to God. And I think that they work hand in hand. We go to God, but God has also given us help that is around and available to us. So just like my brother there has mentioned, please get the necessary help from trained professionals. Help is available. I have worked with a number of patients who struggle with panic attacks, for example. There are known and proven therapies that can help to be able to process and really deal with that. So thank you so much for that. Thank you. Pastor, then we can come to you.
Thank you very much for the presentation you just given.
Okay.
I want to emphasize more on the spiritual aspect. Okay. My background, I'm coming from the psychology background. I've done a little bit of normal psychology. Some of these things we're talking about. First of all, we give my example. I lost my father in circumstances. My father was murdered. We would find it for a number of days. After 2-3 weeks or so, or a month, we found his remains. We only managed to pay a few bonds and lose teeth. You know, it was something brutal that happened many years ago. Nobody gave me quality counsel, you know. And I came back to my home in blankets. When I felt depressed, when I felt stressed, I took my great controversy book and I started to read it. And I prayed to the Lord. I understood the great controversy more than ever. And God healed me that way. I still believe when our brother presented the health message, Jesus went about in all cities, villages, healing all manner of sicknesses, whether mental, social. Do I really believe that Jesus heals all manner of sicknesses? If I do believe that, it is our duty to claim the promises of God. My peace I give unto you. Not as the world peace. So if anyone does not have peace, they are traumatized. It's a call to challenge God on his promise. I am claiming your peace right now, Jesus. I'm in trouble. Many a time we hear a still small voice saying, fear not, I'm with you. I always hear that voice. Fear not, I'm with you. God speaks to men. He heals all broken hearts. Broken hearts can be healed. Maybe, I don't know, I don't condemn any other methods of health that are there. But at the end of it all, the great physician is Christ. If he says, my peace I give unto you, pray until you get that peace. You know, I was reading the great God, it says, when Jacob was going to meet Esau, you know the story. Jacob wrestled with God in the night. Ellen White says the devil was trying to drive Jacob to despair, to remove his confidence from God. But he wrestled and said, I won't let you go until you in the breakthrough came. Now I understand that the great controversy is a war for the mind. It's the battle for the mind, isn't it? So if the devil can get your mind by depression, by stress, he'll get you. It's our duty to resist that. Mind, character, and personality says it is our duty to resist doubt. It is our duty to resist fear. For through those channels, the devil will conquer us. And then some youngster, some young lady will contemplate committing suicide. It's because he's been defeated up here. Judas, when he saw Jesus Christ, says he was broken by remorse. And he went and hung him, and he turned to Christ and asked for forgiveness. Would he have been broken? How do you handle remorse? How do you handle rejection by a boyfriend or a girlfriend? When some people stop coming to church, am I speaking sense? Broken, defeated, ugly. Resist the devil, because he will conquer you here. So I think the Lord is willing to give us his peace, to restore us. Finally, I just want to say, as a pastor or a public person, people come to you, phone calls midnight, somebody say, Pastor, I want to kill myself. What has happened? They start listening. Why am I saying this? Because we are taking the Great Commission to the world. They are broken people. They are suicidal people, whether students in the hostels. How do you handle that? I found that if one of your people is a missionary, you must lift up Jesus before them. I said to your sister, why don't you kill yourself? So sister, because I know they are depressed, you don't reason rationally. Your thinking is warped. So somebody must not sense it in you. I said, sister, if you want to kill yourself, you are actually saying, Jesus, you are useless. You have failed to help me. I'm taking my problem into my own hands. Do you believe Jesus can save you out of this? And then somebody comes down and starts talking. She's alive today. Talking about flashbacks, my brother. Flashbacks. Things that happened many years ago. The devil flashback them back into your mind. If you entertain the flashbacks, he will defeat you. So say, Lord, the devil has come. He's bringing me into my mind all the memories. Lord, I don't want this. Take it away from me. It goes. I used to dream about my father, the late, at night. And we know state of the dead, isn't it? Every time I had a dream, I knew that I said, Lord, you told me the dead know nothing. Who is giving me this dream? Oh, why can't you give me heaven the dreams? Then I dream preaching in church, late for the sermon. And I said, God is good, eh? So we don't want to cry babies who are always defeated. Because sometimes if you learn to depend on people too much, those people become your idols. When they are not there, you go into relapse. If those drugs don't work, those medications don't work, you go into relapse. But Jesus does not take me to relapse. Where is your faith? One day Jesus asked his people. So I still believe Jesus is the great physician.
Thank you so much. Maybe can I ask, I was given up till 3:30, so where's my Bamini Panache? How many minutes do you give me? Panache? How many more minutes? Okay, we're also looking for him. Elder, you can speak.
This line is this short. The Bible says if you go into the testimony, if they do not speak according to this word, then there is no light in it. So there's many solutions that we can come up with. So there are many solutions that we can come up with. Ellen White also wrote that there are many ways of practicing the healing art, but there's only one that heaven approves. So this is mental health, emotional health. And there are many people who may claim to be qualified and to be certified and equipped to help on this. Many will write books on this issue. I'd like to recommend to God's children, number one, let's make the Bible the first source of counsel. I once had suicidal thoughts, and studying the Bible helped me. I'm alive today because of God's blessing through the Bible. After the Bible, there is spiritual prophecy. Some of the things have been mentioned in history of healing, mind, character, personality, Those are the standards. If you're going to look for human help, people who are qualified, look for professionals who are born with the Bible and spiritual prophets. Don't just take anyone who's qualified. The sister has shown already that she is quoting from SOP, which is a very good sign. I don't know her personally, but already she's won my confidence. And there are many others.
Usiku recupera kwa kula